My name is Jennifer Joyner. I'm a Toronto artist. I'm 61 today. It's my birthday. I've been doing this a long time. It has been intermittent. It has been nonsense. It has been ridiculous. It has been unhappy, but it also has been about making art. It was just riveting for me from a very early age. Over the years and in the beginning, I was much more interested in making it than looking at it. I was interested in pattern, tone, color, line, looking. At 20, I was pretending to be an artist. I thought, I think I'm an artist, and it was a kind of a pretense. And I went to London for a year, taking a year away from my studies, which was a literature degree here in Toronto. I would tell people I was an artist, so it was all very foolish, but I was drawing every day, all the time. The river, people in cafe, sailboats, everything. And it was a really good year of drawing. The first 10 years of working was in publishing. There was never an idea of making a living from art. I had done quite a bit of looking around Yorkville galleries when I was in my teens, since I had a couple good art teachers who kept sending us down there. So I became aware of artists like Emile Bourgeois, who was still being sold on the market in Yorkville galleries, and one of those paintings is at the AGO now. Emily Carr was always an influence. I had seen a huge exhibition of hers in the mid-70s. And I was particularly drawn to the large charcoal tree studies that were part of that exhibit. So I was pretty well acquainted with what was available to see and a lot of Canadian artists. The study began when I was on my 2 maternity leaves, mid-80s. And I would take myself down to the Toronto School of Art Sunday sessions, and I did some years of life drawing. And I was then enrolled at York University's Fine Art Department. And one of the Toronto School of Art life drawing things I did was to complete in 1993 a series of charcoal portraits. And so I have to say that I enjoyed it when I was a teenager into my 20s, when I started practicing art more seriously and more openly and publicly in my 30s. And it was in every decade how I identified myself and what I offered to the world. It is a challenge to decide how much you're going to keep that viewer in mind. The art does dictate its own needs, and your interests do as well, and your influences. I'm not a great lover of Paul Klee, that he was definitely an influence in the matter of the use of the grid. My art continually returns to the grid. My first work with the grid was in India ink, and I even had some of those pieces in a commercial gallery. And my very nice gallerist said, well, maybe the grade is putting people off. And so you think about that. But the making of it was like making the universe. You were working with pen and ink, you were working with brush and ink, and you were working in a kind of a free fall sort of way where you let the medium go where it would like to, and you controlled it, or you set up parameters, you set up controls, and made a piece in and of itself. And in my case, so often without reference to narration, without reference to storytelling. It was more about the form. When you make a piece of art, you're making something for the first time. And this is a very difficult thing to do, and to do well. There are so many times that even with practice, even knowing where things can go, even working in a series, you can be completely dumbstruck about what you're going to do next. And there is a tendency to let the work carry through. And fortunately, when you're working, the work suggests something else and something new or a different avenue. And the work begins to make itself, especially when you've set up parameters that have, like a grid, that means that if you keep to some of those parameters, the work begins to make itself. And it moves in directions that you have not strictly kept control over or intended, which is probably a fortunate thing, because it's not like you can think it through or intellectually decide I'm going to make something that looks like this. And in the end, it's, much less than what it might be if it made itself. And I do tend to want to confound the viewer and obscure meaning, drawing attention more to the art as an object and less to a human narration. There should be more art in people's walls. I mean, this is why IKEA, for example, can sell large-scale photographs of the Eiffel Tower, because people do want something on their walls. A world without art is not something anybody would contemplate. We like art, we like music, and we like visual arts. We go to museums. We support through our government quite a bit of art making. People are vastly interested in art who do want to decorate their walls and who do want to support artists. And I've been able to let them have my work, but it's not at a price where I can afford to keep going that way. Without any collectors, without gallery at the moment, representation, it does mean it becomes, again, a very private practice. So I knew it as a private practice when I was in my 20s, when I wasn't even thinking of art as a full-time activity. It became a full-time activity, supported by my husband, but I had to return to work, of course, and it became an intermittent activity. And art suffers when it's intermittent. You keep coming back, you don't go forward very well, you don't develop that well, you repeat yourself, and you are kind of stuck. When I was young, the world is your oyster. You think that anything and everything is possible, and that is a good thing. And it means that art is going to be made. The idea of making art almost full-time for several decades is a subject most people will avoid. I do get a lot of thoughts and suggestions from people that this is some kind of noble, wonderful, passionate thing to do. For me, it was more like a job. Occasionally, it might be a bit of magic, or you might be on a roll, or something deeper happens in spite of you, but this is true as well of teaching or of even working in a corporate world where creativity and things that come together magically can happen. Art is no different. I am not any more intuitive or any more of an intellectual thinker. I have not that much more skill than any kindergarten child. I will leave a body of work, but who knows where it's going to end up. So it's been interesting. You might not, repeat it. I do worry a little bit about what's going to happen with these canvases. They do accumulate, and I have given them away. I have sold them, but I've also given them away, and that was a bit satisfying. Not to individuals, but out on the lawn, with neighbors passing by. Out in my lobby of the apartment I lived in Guelph, I have a young man in Guelph who considers himself to be a collector of my art because he picked up 5 or 6 paintings from the lobby. So more power to him.